If we were to turn to nationally, what would you say about what's been done by the federal government so far to try to fill that gap? Is that likely to be enough to fill the gap that you're seeing? Is there some different path that you'd like to see future aid legislation take in this area?
So I think the first thing we need to decide is how do we rate the essentialness of schooling? So we would commit that schooling is one of the most important things we need to have working right. So if we don't have school working right, we're not only falling behind as a country in learning, but it's incredibly disruptive to families. So far, we've dedicated about 13 billion in federal aid to our K-12 system, which sounds like a lot of money until you realize we spend about 600 billion a year. So it's really just a fraction.
Wow.
And what we're asking of our schools is so much more. So it's actually much more expensive to transition to online learning, to have that equipment in place. And what we're thinking about in the fall is a whole variety of things that need to change. So one of the ideas is that you'd have half as many kids in a classroom. So that means that you need twice as much space. So this is going to be really challenging, and we really do need extra money for schools right now.
Yeah, and potentially twice as many professors, which is certainly good news for kids finishing up their dissertations and thinking about going into academia. But I want to talk a little bit about you talked about the $13 billion, and that money is obviously seems wholly inadequate as a lump sum, but apparently it's also localities are having trouble figuring out exactly how they should spend it. I know that the Secretary of Education has been saying she wants the majority to go towards private schools, even though in a lot of these areas it's overwhelmingly public. Is that going to create significant barriers to even the small amount of aid that's been provided actually getting to kids?
There does seem to be a lot of chaos right now and a lot of confusion about how to get this money into hands of schools quickly. The way the federal law was written is it said it should be a formula based on the number of low-income kids in schools. The secretary then gave guidance that seemed to suggest that additional money would go to private schools. Now you have states like Mississippi saying, well, we're going to follow the letter of the law. So it's really confusing right now. And I think probably no cabinet leader right now, and the Trump administration has a lot of credibility, but particularly Secretary Devos really doesn't have a lot of credibility within the education community right now. So that's also compounding it.
And a sort of related issue that potentially could tie into the economic struggles that people are already experiencing, and that certainly will follow in the wake of once we finally move past this pandemic, is there was going to be legislation that was going to overturn Betsy DeVos's intervention on student loan forgiveness. That has been itself taken out. What do you think about that as a potential avenue for effort to try to get some aid for those already overburdened by a ton of student loan debt? Presumably that itself would be vetoed as well, but is this an area that you think some good could be done in?
Well, I think we really have two crises in education right now. We have the crises of not being able to get into school buildings and all the compounding complexity and cost with that. And we had the crisis before that of student loans, where there were so many people burdened with their effort to go and do what we asked them to do, which is go get a higher education. So I think anything we can do on the higher education loans that helps people right now is what we should be doing, because no one can afford even their daily expenses, let alone these huge student loans.
Yeah, I'm curious. I know that right now we're trying to deal with a pandemic, which is still claiming hundreds and hundreds of American lives every day. But it seems like for the kids, they're potentially being set back. Some might miss a semester or longer because we don't know. There's talk about the possibility of a second wave coming as kids would be going off to high school and college and all of that. If they are forced to miss a semester or two, then that also means that their graduation is being set back, their careers are being set back. Is there an understanding or awareness of the fact that this is going to have ripple effects spreading decades into the future potentially?
I think we know that academically. So there's been a lot of research that's looked in America and in other countries at what happens when kids miss school. So there's a study in Argentina where there was big rolling strikes, and some kids in the country missed a few months of school. And you could actually track the cost of that over the course of their career. So they actually earned less money over the course of their career. And even more daunting is that you could actually see an impact on those kids' kids. So it actually down a generation. So it's troubling and really scary. I would say that the challenge is everyone's working really hard against the odds. And so I think that a little bit of just resignation is set in, like, this is what we have to deal with.
Yeah. So huge struggles ahead, and I know, for parents who are currently dealing with it, your organization has resources, like collections of places where people can get help and things like that. Can you tell people where they can find that?
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, which is 50can.org. So it's 50can.org. We've got a whole section on COVID-19 with resources for parents. We have active campaigns with people on the ground you can plug into. We also do a weekly news roundup where we bring all of the resources and actions and all the things that are happening at the federal and state level right into your inbox. So you can sign up for that.
Awesome. Mark Porter McGee, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, John.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.